It all started with a casual comment, dropped like a stone into the quiet pond of my retirement plans. My daughter-in-law, Sarah, was describing the upcoming family vacation, their upcoming family vacation, I should clarify, to the Maldives. 2 weeks. Over the Christmas holidays. Sun, sand, exorbitant overwater bungalows. It sounded lovely, if slightly ostentatious, but then came the kicker. And of course, she said, waving a dismissive hand as if it were the most obvious thing in the world, Mom, you'll take Buster. He's so attached to you, and frankly, boarding him for 2 weeks in December is just ridiculous money. It's a win-win. Before we dive into the story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below, and if you believe family should protect, not exploit each other. Hit that like button and subscribe for more. A win-win. Her words echoed in the sudden silence. There had been no question, no request, no discussion. Just an announcement, a directive wrapped in a flimsy justification about the dog's alleged attachment to me and the cost savings for them. It wasn't just the assumption that stung, it was the complete dismissal of my own plans, my own time, my own life. It was the stark realization that, despite years of support, sacrifice, and unwavering generosity, I was, in their eyes, little more than unpaid help, conveniently available to handle the burdens that cut into their luxury. For years, I had poured my resources, both emotional and financial, into my son Mark and his wife Sarah. After my husband passed, leaving me with a comfortable but not limitless nest egg, I'd felt a strong pull to help them build their life. Down payment assistance for their first home, contributions to the grandchildren's education funds, countless hours of free childcare, help with renovations, car repairs, you name it. I'd done it out of love, believing we were a close-knit family, mutually supportive. I saw their struggles, their aspirations, and I genuinely wanted to ease their path. I never asked for repayment or even much in the way of thanks. Their happiness and security felt like my reward. But Sarah's casual entitlement, her absolute certainty that my time was hers to commandeer for the inconvenient task of caring for their high-maintenance bulldog, Buster, while they jetted off to tropical paradise, felt like a slap in the face. It forced me to confront a possibility I had long ignored. Perhaps my generosity wasn't seen as love, but as weakness. Perhaps I wasn't a valued member of the family unit, but simply a resource to be mined. It planted a seed of doubt, cold and hard, in my heart. What she discovered next would force her to choose between family loyalty and self-preservation. My life since Arthur passed 2 years prior had settled into a quiet rhythm. My house, paid for, was larger than I needed, but filled with memories. My investments, managed conservatively, provided a comfortable income. I enjoyed my garden club, my book group, and occasional visits from friends. I cherished the time with my 2 young grandchildren, though Sarah often dictated when and how those visits occurred, always seemingly around her convenience or when she needed a break. Mark, bless him, was often oblivious, caught between my quiet support and Sarah's more demanding nature. He worked long hours, focused on providing for his family, and seemed content to let Sarah manage the domestic sphere, which increasingly included managing me. Buster, their bulldog, was a creature of demanding habits. He required special food, multiple medications, frequent vet visits, and couldn't be left alone for more than a few hours due to respiratory issues. Sitting him wasn't just throwing down a bowl of kibble, it was a commitment, a responsibility requiring constant attention and a significant amount of physical effort, especially getting him up and downstairs with his bad knees. Boarding a dog with his specific needs wasn't just expensive, it required specialized care, the kind they knew I was capable of providing for free, given my experience with my own dogs over the years. I remember Sarah scrolling through her phone, showing off pictures of the resort they'd booked, the overwater villa, the infinity pool. Her excitement was palpable. "It's going to be epic," she gushed, oblivious to the tight knot forming in my stomach. "Mark needs this break so badly." And I just have to get away from this dreary weather. She chattered on about flights, excursions, packing lists, all centered around her and Mark's desires, with my assumed role as Buster's caregiver woven into the fabric of their plans as if it were an automated service provided by the house itself. This wasn't a spontaneous trip, this was a meticulously planned luxury escape. And the planning had clearly included writing me into the script without my knowledge or consent. Later that week, I overheard a conversation between Sarah and her mother on the phone. Sarah's voice, usually syrupy sweet with me, was sharp and dismissive. "No, Mom, it's sorted. My mother-in-law is taking Buster. Honestly, it's perfect. She's retired, she's always home, and she adores him." A pause. "Well, yes, she does help out a lot, but honestly, it's the least she can do, isn't it? She has that big house all to herself, and we could really use the favor. It saves us thousands on boarding, and we deserve this trip." The words hit me like physical blows. The least she can do, she has that big house all to herself. We deserve this trip, not, would you mind, or could you possibly, but she is taking him. It was a transaction in her mind. My years of support boiling down to a simple calculation of convenience and entitlement. The adoration she claimed I had for Buster was just a convenient justification for demanding my free labor. It wasn't about Buster's welfare. It was about their wallet and their convenience. I felt a wave of nausea, followed by a surge of anger so cold it was almost peaceful. The initial shock and hurt began to crystallize into a hard resolve. This wasn't just about dog-sitting, it was about respect. Or the complete lack thereof. It was about being seen not as a mother, a generous benefactor, or even just another human being with her own life, but as a utility. The least she could do, indeed. My mind, usually gentle and accommodating, started to turn over possibilities. The next few days were a blur of quiet activity and internal processing. I started subtly documenting things. I took screenshots of Sarah's public social media posts detailing their Maldives countdown and lavish plans. I jotted down the dates of their planned departure and return, December 22nd to January 5th. I found veterinary invoices for Buster in a pile of mail left on the counter during a visit, noting the cost of his medications and recent treatments. I researched the average cost of specialized dog boarding for a bulldog with his needs for 2 weeks over the holidays. The figures were staggering, easily several $1,000s. Sarah hadn't exaggerated. Boarding him was expensive. And that expense was precisely why she had nominated me without asking. I also started paying closer attention to how they spoke to me, the assumptions embedded in their requests, the way they treated my time as infinitely flexible and always available. It was eye-opening, like seeing colors for the first time. The subtle manipulation, the guilt trips. Oh, the kids would be so disappointed if Grandma wasn't there for the school play, when I had a prior commitment. The passive aggression. It must be nice to have so much free time. When I declined an unreasonable last-minute request, it had been there all along, but I had excused it, minimized it, put it down to their stress or the demands of raising a young family. Now I saw it for what it was, a deliberate pattern of exploitation. My initial denial, maybe she didn't mean it like that, maybe I misunderstood, quickly evaporated. Their entitlement was a palpable presence in my home whenever they visited. I recalled countless times I had rearranged my schedule, canceled my own plans, or driven out of my way to accommodate them, always with a smile and a willingness to help. And they had come to expect it, even demand it. I realized with painful clarity that my love and generosity had not fostered gratitude, but rather a sense of right. My first small defensive action was purely symbolic. I changed the passcode on my Wi-Fi. It was a trivial thing, but it was mine. They wouldn't even notice, or if they did, they'd just assume I was being forgetful. But it felt like a small assertion of control over my own space. Then, I started keeping my important documents, passport, financial statements, property deeds, in a locked box, just in case. It felt extreme, paranoid even, but the overheard conversation had planted a deep-seated unease. If they could assume my time and resources for something as mundane as dog-sitting, what else might they feel entitled to? The pressure subtly increased as the trip dates drew closer. Sarah started leaving Buster's things at my house: his special food bags, his crate, his favorite chew toys. Not asking if I was ready or confirming the dates, but simply dropping them off with a cheerful, "Just leaving this here, Mom." Getting organized. It felt like she was marking her territory, staking her claim. She sent me links to articles about separation anxiety in dogs, clearly aimed at reinforcing the idea that Buster needed my constant, loving presence. She talked incessantly about the trip in front of me, detailing the activities, the flights, the transfer to the remote island. Each mention of their impending luxury vacation highlighted the contrast with the task they had assigned me: 2 weeks confined to my house, tied to Buster's demanding schedule, missing my own planned Christmas activities with friends. I continued gathering evidence: calendar entries marking their trip dates, screenshots of Sarah's social media, the vet bills showing Buster's needs, notes on the dates she dropped off his things without confirmation. It wasn't evidence for a court case, not yet, but it was evidence of a pattern of their assumption, their deliberate lack of communication or respect for my time. I knew I needed professional advice, but not necessarily legal advice about this specific situation at first. What I needed was guidance on how to protect myself and how to execute the counter-strategy forming in my mind. I called my financial advisor first, ostensibly for a routine review. We discussed my portfolio, my income needs, and my long-term plans. I casually mentioned wanting to take a significant trip myself, something I'd always dreamed of doing, but kept putting off. He was encouraging, helping me identify how to allocate funds without impacting my security. This gave me the financial confidence I needed. Then, I called a travel agent I had used years ago. I explained I wanted a significant, luxurious trip, something completely different from my usual routine, and I wanted it to coincide exactly with a specific 2-week period, December 22nd to January 5th. I wanted sun, relaxation, and absolutely no responsibilities. The Maldives, as it happened, was precisely the kind of place that fit the bill. The agent was thrilled to help, presenting various options, discussing flights, transfers, and accommodations. As I discussed the details, the flights, the resorts, the cost, a quiet sense of exhilaration began to build. This wasn't just about escaping a chore. It was about reclaiming my autonomy, about investing in my own happiness for the first time in a long time. As my plans solidified, Sarah's behavior became more presumptuous. She started issuing instructions about Buster's care via text messages, specific feeding times, medication reminders, walking routes. "Don't forget Buster's evening pill at exactly 6 p.m., Mom. Make sure you let Buster out right before bed. He gets restless if you wait too long." It was as if I were a paid employee reporting to her. There was still no direct conversation. No, "Are you still good for these dates, Mom?" Just commands and assumptions. One afternoon, Sarah dropped by unannounced. I happened to be researching resorts on my laptop, looking at pictures of crystal clear water and white sand beaches. I quickly closed the window. "Just planning some things," I said vaguely. Sarah barely noticed, launching into a complaint about the airline seating and how she was trying to get an upgrade. "It's just so stressful," she sighed dramatically, sinking onto my sofa. "Everything is so expensive, and planning all this is just exhausting. At least we don't have to worry about Buster," she smiled, a tight, self-satisfied smile. "It's such a load off our minds knowing he's with you. He'll be much happier here than in a kennel." This was antagonist micro cameo too, the direct reinforcement of the assumption, the justification wrapped in concern for the dog, the complete lack of awareness that she was asking for a massive, uncompensated favor while complaining about the stress of her luxury vacation planning. She even had the audacity to complain about the cost of her trip, implicitly highlighting how much I was saving them. It was breathtaking in its sheer audacity. But I remained calm. "Yes, well," I said, choosing my words carefully. Buster is certainly a commitment. I didn't agree, I didn't confirm, but I didn't give away my plan either. My resolve hardened into steel. There was no turning back. They had taken my quiet willingness to help and twisted it into an expectation of servitude. My strategic preparation moved into high gear. I booked the flights and paid for the resort, securing my own slice of paradise. I arranged for a friend to pick up my mail and water my plants. I packed my suitcase slowly, deliberately, choosing lightweight clothes, swimwear, and the few books I'd been saving for uninterrupted reading. I arranged for a reputable, specialized dog boarding facility, the expensive kind Sarah wanted to avoid, to pick Buster up from my house on the morning of December 22nd. I paid for his 2-week stay up front. It cost a substantial amount, but it felt like an investment in my own freedom and peace of mind. It was their responsibility, and while I wasn't going to leave him stranded, I wasn't going to be the one tethered by it either. I informed the boarding facility that Buster's owners would pick him up on January 5th and provided them with Mark's contact information, explaining I would be out of the country and unreachable. The days counted down. Sarah sent a final text, "Flight details attached, Mom. Landing back at 7 p.m. on January 5th. Mark will swing by to get Buster that night. Thanks again, you're a lifesaver." No, are you ready? No, is this still okay? Just the final logistical instruction for pickup. The smoking gun. The absolute certainty of their assumption, laid bare in a simple text message forwarding their flight details. It confirmed everything. They hadn't given a single thought to my availability or my own life. My counter-strategy was now fully armed. My legal weapon in this non-legal battle was my passport and my prepaid vacation. My leverage was their complete reliance on my free labor and their imminent arrival back in the country to find that resource unavailable. My plan was simple. Be gone. Let them figure it out. The morning of December 22nd was crisp and clear. I was up early. I fed Buster, gave him his morning medication, and waited. The van from the boarding facility arrived precisely on time. I calmly handed over Buster, his food, and his medical records, signing the necessary papers. The attendant loaded him gently into the van. I watched him go, feeling a pang of something, not sadness, but a sense of closure. This chapter was ending. I finished my packing, did a final sweep of the house, ensuring everything was locked and secure. On the kitchen counter, I left a single envelope addressed to Mark and Sarah. Inside was a brief, polite note. Mark and Sarah, as you know, your flight arrives back on January 5th. I've arranged for Buster to stay at name of boarding facility until then. They're excellent and well-equipped to handle his needs. Their contact information is below. You can pick him up anytime after 7 p.m. on the 5th. I am out of the country until mid-January and will be unreachable. I hope you had a wonderful trip. Best, Mom. I didn't mention my destination. I didn't explain myself. I didn't apologize. I didn't express disappointment or anger. The note was purely transactional, mirroring their own approach to my time. It stated the facts. I was gone. The dog was safe elsewhere. They needed to deal with the consequences. I left the house an hour later, heading to the airport. As I checked in for my flight to the Maldives, the irony wasn't lost on me. They were in paradise on my assumed time, while I was heading to my actual paradise on my own time, funded by my own resources. The flight was long but peaceful. The transfer to the island resort felt surreal. Stepping out onto the jetty, seeing the impossibly blue water and the white sand, smelling the salt in the air, it was everything I had dreamed of. My overwater bungalow was stunning, a private sanctuary. I unpacked, put on a swimsuit, and walked onto my deck, looking out at the endless ocean. A profound sense of quiet victory washed over me. It wasn't about revenge, it was about self-preservation. I had protected myself, my peace, and my resources from exploitation. I deliberately stayed offline, enjoying the digital detox. I swam, read, ate delicious food, and simply existed without demands or expectations. The only communication I received was a single, frantic email from Mark forwarded by my friend a week later, asking where I was and what they were supposed to do about Buster. I didn't reply. The climax, for them, unfolded on the evening of January 5th. They arrived home, jet-lagged and suntanned, expecting to find Buster excitedly waiting and their mother ready to hand him over, probably with a home-cooked meal waiting for them. Instead, they found a quiet, empty house, devoid of dog or mother, and a note on the counter. Their shock and panic must have been immediate. The note provided the boarding facility's information, and a significant bill awaited them there. They had to scramble, tired and unprepared, to retrieve their dog and pay a hefty sum they had smugly assumed they'd saved. The realization that I wasn't just home waiting, but was actively unavailable and unreachable, must have sunk in like a cold stone. The free ride was over. The truth, inevitably, started to spread through the family grapevine. Not from me, but likely from their frantic calls to other relatives trying to figure out what had happened. The story of Eleanor abandoned the dog likely started, quickly countered by the simple fact the dog was safely boarded at a professional facility they now had to pay for, and I was on my own vacation. The narrative shifted from me being irresponsible to them being caught in their own trap. I remained in the Maldives, serene and detached. I returned home mid-January, refreshed and resolute. There were dozens of missed calls and texts from Mark and Sarah, a mix of anger, confusion, and attempts at guilt-tripping. How could you just leave like that? Buster missed you so much. We were so worried. I didn't respond to any of them directly. My immediate aftermath was peaceful. My house was just as I left it. My mail and plants were tended to. I had reclaimed my space, both physical and emotional. Legally and financially, I was secure. My actions hadn't been malicious. They had been protective. I hadn't harmed Buster. I had ensured he was well cared for, albeit at his owner's unexpected expense. I hadn't stolen from my family. I had simply stopped them from taking from me. The consequences for Mark and Sarah were immediate. The unexpected cost of boarding, the inconvenience, and the public knowledge among at least some family members that they had been caught trying to exploit me. Longer term, they lost their primary source of free help and financial support. I established new boundaries, firm and clear. My phone was on silent for their calls. I responded to texts hours later, if at all, keeping interactions brief and formal. Visits were by invitation only, on my terms, and always with clear time limits. The casual drop-ins, the last-minute demands, the assumptions, they were over. There was no reconciliation. The relationship was permanently changed. The trust was broken, not by my actions, but by their pattern of behavior that my actions had brought to light. I felt no desire to mend it, only to protect myself from further harm. My inner peace wasn't contingent on their approval or their presence. It came from standing up for myself, from reclaiming my dignity and autonomy. I had traded a life of being quietly exploited for a life of quiet strength and hard-won wisdom. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself.